Welcome back to the latest edition of Until Saturday. I'm Ari Wasserman from Dallas, Texas, joined by David Ubben, who is in New Orleans. And I was texting him earlier in the week. It's kind of funny. New Orleans is probably the weirdest food city in the nation
It's a
in
very
terms of
normal
being
food
able to
city.
get bizarre food if that's what you're seeking out. So I asked Dave if he was going to be doing anything weird down there to open the floodgates. And I don't know what have we eaten so far?
Well, I've done the spicy chicken sandwich at Blue Oak Barbecue, which our colleague Brody Miller turned me on to. A top 5 sandwich I've eaten in my life. I'm trying to pace myself a little bit. We'll have like a team dinner later this week. We got a bunch of people down here. And then I went to Felix's and just had some shrimp. Started things off right yesterday. So we're in a good spot.
I mean, you're having normal things. I
piece
thought
together
maybe you would
plans.
have eaten like some fried Sasquatch or something. I'm not sure if that.
No, and I feel bad. I've tried hard to like oysters, and I just don't. I'm sorry to
I
any
don't either.
oyster people.
Yeah.
And oysters and sushi just don't. They don't do it for me, and I'm sorry. Those are two things that I wish I liked. I have tried to like, and I just don't like them. Sorry.
We'll get into some more New Orleans takes as we get down there. Obviously, Dave is covering a playoff game when we get to that section here shortly in segment 1. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, let me formally welcome everybody to the podcast. Be sure you're following this podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please help support the show by dropping a 5-star review, interacting with the show any way you can by liking, sharing, commenting, reviewing, whatever you can do to help. That would be really appreciated. Also, if you're listening to this in podcast form, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel where we are currently live. I want to thank the people who are watching this live for their continued support. And of course, if you want this show in your podcast feed, the links to both the YouTube channel and that podcast feed can be found in both shows' descriptions. And of course, if you want to participate in our Sunday Sound Off show, you can call in on 316-462-9852. That is the Until Saturday phone line. That is 316-462-9852. You can call in and leave whatever thought you have. Nobody does voicemails anymore, but we do voicemails, and we love to hear from you. And you can also text that line too if you have questions and you don't feel like calling in, but we're definitely going to favor the voices because it feels good to have the people who support and listen to the show also be a part of it. Lastly, you can sign up for the Until Saturday newsletter, where you'll get your daily fill of college football news delivered right to your inbox from The Athletic and the great team of writers that we have there. And you do not have to be subscribed to The Athletic to get that newsletter, though I strongly encourage you all to do so. Like always, those links are in both shows' descriptions. Okay. This show is going to start to feel like regular season show because we have a lot of games that people care a lot about.
Yes, sir.
And we're just going to pick them. And all the lines that we will present to you in this show as we pick them and discuss them are brought to you by BetMGM. So we appreciate that sponsorship. And of course, for all you gamblers out there, strongly encourage you to go to check that out.
I got to say, all right, before we start, I feel like I love bowl season, but I forget until bowl season starts how much I love bowl season every single year.
Yeah,
because we're at the time of week where it's wall-to-wall bowls. You know, as we're recording this, I have not seen the edible Pop-Tarts mascot, but that is certainly very high on my list of things to see today. We've had a DJ on a bad boy mower that has disappeared at some point. We've had some decent football, some not great football, some rainy football. It's just, you get a lot of weird stuff in the bowl week, and the games are always interesting. They're always pretty interesting matchups. There's no Big Ten West against Big Ten West teams, which are a real problem, I feel like, in our country. And I'm glad we don't have to watch that anymore. But the bowl season has been fantastic. At any time, I'm in Central Time. We had a bowl game start at 10 a.m. today. That was incredible. And the game's not going to be over until like 11 p.m. Basically, every day is a college football Saturday. And shout out to bowl season. So shout out to you.
You've been really banging there aren't enough bowls.
Yeah, because there's not enough bowls.
Where make people everybody think there's play too many, but you think there's not enough.
Yes. Listen, I think the bowl games have figured out, whether it's the Mayo Bowl and the Mayo Dump, the giant inflatable or the edible mascot. I think bowls have figured out that people like the absurdity. These things don't have to all be, the Rose Bowl built around a sunset and tradition. These things can be
here we
fun.
go again. Okay.
They can be fun and stupid. And like the bowls are really a chance to embrace what a lot of people love about college football, which is just the whole thing is great and stupid and makes no sense and is very fun. And also there's some really great athletes playing. And despite all the things, the opt-outs, the all the things that have sort of taken away from bowl season, it's still interesting football in a lot of cases and a lot of unpredictable games. I've enjoyed it. So with that said,
my favorite part of bowl season is seeing new players who might be catapulted into discussion points. And we can talk a little bit about one player named Miller Moss, maybe later on in the show as we get into some of the other bowl games. Why don't we jump into the games that are important for other reasons besides whether or not you can eat the mascot? It's the playoff time. I mean, it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty to discuss the best teams in college football and whether or not they can win a national championship, which is my favorite part of bowl season. So
I will say, Ari, the Sugar Bowl has the most delicious mascot of all. Everyone loves the Sugar Bowl edible mascot. It's just sugar, Ari.
Do you just take a spoon to it or what?
I mean, in anything. Everybody has a spoon.
Do you have any weird sugar habits?
No, when I was...
Here we go. Here we go, guys. Strap in.
No, when I was a little kid, I'd say 10 to 12, I used to, like the pixie sticks?
Mm-hmm.
I used to do that, but with apple cider mix. With like my finger. You should try it sometime. It was.
What
delicious.
Are you talking about?
So like like the apple cider mix, the packets. You tear it open and like lick your finger and put it in there and then eat it. Like I don't do this anymore, but from like a 3-year period when it got cold, I would do that from time to time. It's basically like apple sugar. It's delicious, I will say.
Okay.
But
yeah, the weirdest thing I do with sugar, I think, is I like having Cheerios or cornflakes. And I'll sprinkle a little sugar on top of the
I do that.
The cornflakes, which some people think is appalling behavior, but I will contend.
No, I'm on board with that. I'm on board. I feel like I don't have any weird sugar takes. I'm not a huge candy person, but I am a big dessert person, if that makes sense.
Okay, let's start off in the Rose Bowl though, because it's your favorite bowl. It's the most beautiful looking bowl. It's the epitome of what makes college football great in every possible way, and it's certainly underrated. The matchup here is Michigan, 13-0, Big Ten champs, laying 1.5 against Alabama, number 4, 12-1, but had a miraculous turnaround after a rough start to the season. And, there's a lot of compelling discussion points here as it pertains to the game. But first, on Thursday, there was a little bit of a, weird comment made by Isaiah Bond that's kind of taking the internet by storm, which is that Alabama is apparently been told by the coaching staff to not watch film on their tablets. And the reason that he gave for that is because apparently the Alabama coaches have said that Michigan has been taking signs and they don't want to do anything or reveal anything on film through whatever the film app is called that Michigan can garner from that. Now, I think that sounds a little paranoia to me, but
wait. College football coaches paranoid?
Yes.
Surely you jest, sorry.
I will say that I once visited a recruiting coordinator in his office at an SEC school, and he told me that they have checked their office for wiretaps. So if you want to talk about paranoia, and I was like, listen,
searching
guys,
the walls for bugs.
I know it means more down here, but it's not that. I promise you that your rival SEC school didn't bug the college football office.
I'm having trouble connecting the dots for. So it was the idea that if players had an iPad in their room, that I don't really understand exactly what.
I think that there is a hosting client or a software that is universally used,
so it's a hacking thing,
which is a hacking thing, and there was a thing. There was a thing where Michigan had a coach who was arrested and fired, or one or the other, for computer crimes, which has still been left pretty vague. And there were message board rumors and stuff that have never been substantiated that Michigan was watching Ohio State practice film on said app. And that hasn't necessarily ever been proven, and I don't really think I believe that.
No.
But
But I
this
don't
is why
understand
people are.
how that's prevented by players watching film in groups on iPads and not.
My
I
understanding
don't
is that they use
understand this
a
reason.
separate software if you watch it as a group, whereas the software is like logged in specifically under your team login name, and that film might be more accessible through. I don't know. I'm just saying the thing that I think you need to take away from this, Dave, isn't necessarily the application of how the hacking would occur, and more that the comment was made publicly and apparently
Yeah.
said to by the team, by the coaching staff.
And Tommy Reese didn't deny it. He just said, "I'm not going to talk about it." But like, would you? But this time of year, you wouldn't be watching a lot of practice film of yourself. This doesn't hold up to me logistically. Like, I have a pretty good knowledge of how these operations work, and I don't really understand what the fear is necessarily. It doesn't make sense.
I think it's more the way I took it is that there wasn't actually paranoia or legit concern that they were going to be sign stealing. I think that it was more of an antagonistic tactic to discuss this publicly. Like, you know what you're doing as a player or a coach if you bring this up. I think that
I wasn't there, so I don't know what the question. I don't know how it came up. Like, but
there's multiple quotes that Isaiah Bond had out there about it, and one was the application of whether or not they should watch it, and the sign stealing situation, which is they still have to play us, and it doesn't really matter. So
yeah, I mean, what Michigan did and this bowl stuff, like, if this was a real worry, then no bowl team should ever watch film individually at a bowl. So again,
here's the quote, Dave. Let me just read it to you guys so you. He said, "The app where we record film off of practice and stuff like that." And they were, I guess, like looking at other people's play calls, their hand signals, the first 8 games or something like that, Bond said.
I don't.
I watch tape all over the building. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to be prepared for the game. It was what Jaylen Milroe added. And Tommy Reese says, "I don't think we've put any harm to what our preparation can look like with any of the things we've done. Again, we're focused on us, less about that stuff and more about what we can do to play well."
This is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that people are talking about.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a key jumping off point here, which is if you bought into Michigan having unfair advantages throughout the year, does that take a impact on this game? But even that, let's just talk about the football game. Like, do you think that Michigan can win this game?
Well, sure, yes. I think it's interesting. It seems like Alabama's taken all the money in the last, pretty much. I mean, I think it's in the 80s, right? 70s, 80s, something along those lines. And this line has not moved in a meaningful way. So I think it's a two-pronged question here, right? Michigan has been dominant all season long. Alabama has not. Alabama has more talent, but Alabama has looked very, very flawed. But for me, I look at this Michigan team. I look at the schedule. It's been well chronicled on this podcast. I am not in love with Ohio State, so beating Ohio State doesn't really impress me all that much. And Alabama, we're still talking about the most talented team, a team that's figured itself out in a lot of ways. I think this will be a low-scoring game. So sure, Michigan can win this game, but Nick Saban, with a month to prepare, with a much more talented roster, I like the Tide in this game. And it wouldn't shock me if Michigan won this game and Vegas is correct and all that stuff. But I've watched a lot of these two teams, and Michigan's been dominant, but I don't think they faced a challenge like this on the lines of scrimmage, at quarterback. I wouldn't say at receiver. I think Milroe is probably the best quarterback they've played all year, and that's, I mean, not the highest bar in the world. Milroe is a good player. We can touch on Bill O'Brien's Jaylen.
Yeah, we will.
Take. But I think it's I've liked Alabama in this game since this game was announced, but that seems to be the very public take. But
that's the thing that I'm struggling with.
In this game is
here's what I'm struggling with. I think that picking Alabama is very easy. Okay.
Yes.
And everybody's doing it, and everybody thinks that Michigan's quarterback is overrated and that Michigan has been dominant against bad teams all year. Here, look right here. Chris Callahan. JJ is the most overrated in college football. that Michigan's dominance has been more of a product of a weak schedule more so than a dominant test. That they were
That's a
cheating,
Rorschach test.
all that stuff. And the line is 1.5 as Michigan a favorite. Everybody's betting on Alabama. The line isn't moving. And let me tell you, as somebody who has gambled my entire life, basically, that rarely do you see a game that everybody thinks is obvious. You bet a bunch of money on it, and then it's just easy. So, like, and it's just an easy win. Like, I just don't think that this game is going to go that way. And, like, we had to submit picks. The entire staff did the playoff picks for a content piece, and I picked Michigan to win. And that sounds crazy, but I can't give you a single identifiable reason why I think Michigan's going to win, but I think they're going to, because I have this weird gut feeling telling me that we don't know what we think we know. Because all of the signs, Nick Saban with a month to prepare, Jaylen Milroe finding himself, the team total talent, the average player on Alabama's roster being the top 75 player, like all of that stuff, the line play, it all points towards Alabama. Like, I don't know, like, if you're a Michigan analyst, what you even stand on if you pick them to win. Like, what are they saying is the reason. And I think the only thing that I can come up with is that they are far more experienced and have executed their football at a more high level consistently this year than Alabama, which has gone like this. So if the thought process is that Alabama is going to falter because Michigan knows exactly who it is and how it needs to execute its plays and can do that steadfastly, I think I could buy that. But I just don't know if I think that experience is a replacement for pure talent on this type of stage. I've said for the last 10 years of my career that I don't think that teams that recruit in the 10 to 20 range are built to win 3 or 4 games like this in a row. They've already beaten Ohio State, credit to them. But I think this is a completely different animal. And I truly think in my heart or in my head that Alabama should win this game quite comfortably. But in my gut, there's just something telling me there that we're missing a part of this puzzle here. And I don't really know what it is or how it manifests. It could manifest in Jaylen Milroe throwing some more picks than we anticipate, or bad penalties, or, grab-ass games all the time that we watch and go, hey, look at all the things. Like, I mean, if you watch the Buffalo Bills play the LA Chargers the other night, it's like muff punt, penalty, turnover, all the things that, you would never expect could happen. And then all of a sudden, one of the best teams in the NFL is, a field goal away from losing at the end. So I think that's kind of the way the game is going to go. I think Michigan's going to play hard. I think that they're going to be more disciplined in the way that they execute. And I think that consistency is going to level the playing field a little bit. But I do think that Alabama is a better football team with a better coach and better players. So it's like, I don't know. Well, maybe that's the wrong way to say it, Dave. I think Michigan's a better football team, but Alabama has a better coach and better players. Is that fair?
So I have 2 thoughts for you on this, Ari. So one, what I'm hearing is that stars don't matter, which has been your consistent take over the last 10, 15 years of covering the sport. So stars don't matter. And Ari, when you pick Michigan, is there any concern that Michigan will care about this game at all because they've already won the only game that matters on their schedule? And this doesn't really matter. They've already won the only championship that matters in Michigan. So
their entire program is completely and utterly different in every facet of the realm that we analyze their program because of those games. They haven't won a playoff game yet, and the way that we talk about and analyze Michigan is completely different as a result of what?
Yeah.
I know. I mean, like, unless you think that like winning a national championship would certainly change that, but the tenor of Michigan's football program has been completely done. What is that? What have they done besides beat Ohio State the last 3 years?
Won a Big Ten.
I know, but that is winning the Big Ten. That's what that means.
Sure, but you have to actually do it.
So I'm just saying, like, downplaying the importance of winning that game is funny to me because it's the thing they couldn't do, and it got them over the hump in the second most powerful conference in the sport.
Yeah.
Whether or not they can win a playoff game is a completely different scenario. It's indoors. And I know that I say that a lot, but I think it does make a difference when you're playing with super fast, talented players. Yeah. There's no elements. It's not cold. The track is fast. Like, that stuff matters. Like, playing indoors, beating those teams that are playing at a high level in those environments. I don't know that if I watch the SEC championship game, I think that Michigan beats either of those teams.
Yeah. Ari, are you a Notre Dame USC 2005 truther? I personally am.
I don't know what that means.
long grass at Notre Dame Stadium.
The
Bush game.
Yeah. I mean,
I personally am. I think
when I was covering Ohio State,
thing.
there was multiple, like Northwestern apparently used to like water the grass down and like
the
grass. Like, I mean, if you don't run as fast, the thing I never understood about that theory though was that doesn't it make Northwestern's players also slower?
Well, like, but it would negate the difference slightly. I think that's real. Maybe I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now, but I think that's real.
I think here's a tinfoil hat. I think that it's harder for teams with less talent to beat teams with a lot of talent on an indoor field.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that's. I don't even know if is that a fact. It's a fact in my head. I don't know if it's a fact in real life.
I think it's right. Well, I think data would suss out whether that's a specious fact or a legitimate fact, but it tracks.
Well, here's a legitimate fact: no team built like Alabama has lost a playoff game in the entire CFP era to another team that wasn't built like Alabama.
Yeah.
So this would be the first time in the entire playoff era where a team that is outside of the top 7 in the 247 sport composite, I think maybe one of the Clemson teams did it. But as we know, the Clemson teams
transcendent
were
QB.
Transcendent.
Now I think
QBs with a lot of draft picks.
Because if Michigan does win this game, it offers up the question of, okay, so the one way that you make up that gap, transcendent quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, but
Cam Newton, but he didn't have to play in the playoff.
Yeah, but if Michigan wins, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had for, okay, well, how do we measure talent and development? Because
we already have to have that conversation.
They've
already made it too far to have that.
No, I don't think we do. I don't think we do yet. I want to see Michigan go up against the big bad, the so-called final boss, the Group A final boss.
Yeah,
Ohio State, you can call them Group A. This was not a great Ohio State team. This is not a team that was that impressive for me.
Well, the thing that scares me about the data point here is that this isn't a great Alabama team either.
It's
like
not,
Alabama's really good, but it's not.
That's kind
like,
of the point, though. It's not like Michigan's like an unbeatable. But if they beat the Bama team and do it convincingly, it's interesting because Michigan may not be as high in the talent composite, but when the NFL draft is done in April or May or whatever, I think Michigan might have the most players drafted in the country. So it's how do you want to measure talent?
Well, here's the thing:
recruiting versus NFL guys.
If you stacked up this Michigan team against like the Trevor Lawrence Alabamas and the Ohio States with Justin Fields and all those like big time like super teams at the apex, the 2019 LSU team, like I don't think that this team could keep up with any of those teams. I think
would agree with that.
I think that we're in a scenario right now where they caught Ohio State. Not the last 2 years, but like they haven't been peak versions of themselves. And now they're getting an Alabama team that's not a peak version of itself. And then if they have to play Texas, that's another team that has more talent than them. That like if they beat Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas and then win the national championship, they will have definitively done what I thought was physically impossible. Yeah. So we regardless of whether or not we think that these teams are as good as those 2017 through 19 or even the 20 Alabama team. I don't think this Alabama team could hold its skates against those teams either. So,
all right. Here's a question. Here's a question for you on this Michigan team. How many quarterbacks in college football, if you replaced Kyle McCord with them, beat Michigan in Ann Arbor this year?
I don't know. You're putting me in a position where they're going to clip this and put it on a Michigan message board, and I don't like it. If I answer that question, I'm going to sound like a homer.
That number in my mind. 10 to 15. If Brady Cook is playing for Ohio State instead of Kyle McCord, does Ohio State?
I don't know, man. I'm not going to go down that road. I don't know.
I
think the transcendent players, sure. I mean, I don't know.
But Ohio State didn't need a transcendent quarterback. They needed a quarterback that could get the ball to the incredible weapons that they have, and quite frankly, they didn't have that. Yeah.
The question is, if Will Howard was Ohio State's quarterback, would they have won?
Yes.
Yeah.
They would have. 10 to 15 guys.
Yeah, whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is that
it does kind of matter though, because I think
Michigan is a favorite to beat Alabama in an indoor neutral field right now. That's what matters.
Being a favorite and actually doing it are two different things. And my question is Michigan going to be exposed as somewhat of a paper tiger? I don't think so. But if Michigan loses this game by 17 points, are you going to clutch your pearls and faint, Ari? Because I'm not.
No. I actually think that my analysis of the game would lead to that, but I think I'm going to be wrong.
I kind of think it's.
I think the entire country is going to be wrong. I think we're all being set up here.
Maybe it's possible. This is a fascinating game. I mean, this is kind of what we're talking about, Ari. Where I'm still kind of like frustrated with the Florida State thing, but these games are awesome and they're interesting and going to be entertaining.
And it didn't help that Louisville just got its ass kicked by USC.
That did not help them. But I'm fascinated by this game. So I think Alabama wins. You think Michigan wins, but it's sort of a self-contrarian take.
Do you know what's kind of funny? That like we were talking about how this is an indoor game and it's actually outdoors the whole time.
Well, I thought we were talking about that as a thought exercise.
It is a thought exercise, and the Rose Bowl is outdoors. I wanted to just
the Rose Bowl, respectfully though, is the closest thing to an indoor field.
It
outside. It's going to be 70 degrees, 65 degrees, whatever,
and the turf is going to be perfect.
The turf will be perfectly manicured, and people will get their stupid sunset or whatever.
Can you stop shitting on the sunset, dude? Like, it's beautiful.
It is.
You've never covered one, have you?
I haven't. But here's the thing. I've seen a lot of sunsets. There's a lot. Listen, so you're going to tell me that if you go
you just don't get it because you haven't experienced it, dude.
So if you go to the Hawaii Bowl and you go walk on Waikiki Beach and you've got
what it is?
Diamond Head behind you, and you look down the beach.
And you get it. There's beautiful sunsets in the tropics.
Yes,
I get it.
There is.
You know what it is? And you have been living in a place that gets very cold because it's been such a, Midwestern oasis. Mm-hmm. It's going to a place that is 70 or 72 degrees when you leave a snowstorm and going to this place that is perfect weather every year. And then the essence and the feeling of being at a football game combined with that. Like if you go to Hawaii, of course you're going to see a beautiful sunset, but it's the vibe and the atmosphere of the game that is combined with something so pretty and the ambiance that creates at a football game that makes it such a breathtaking experience. It's not necessarily
UTEP football, and they have a stadium with mountains behind it.
Except these games tend to have mattered a lot to the people that are either there watching it or the teams participating in it.
We're going to talk about the Sun Bowl.
I don't want to have to explain to you the importance of the Rose Bowl, especially historically.
I get it. All I've said is just chill out, people. That's my only point.
And the logo is beautiful too, which we don't.
It is a great logo.
Yeah,
I will say this game produced maybe my favorite helmet of all time, the TCU helmet with the frog with the rose in its mouth.
Yeah, Utah's done a really good job too with the UU with the anybody.
Yeah.
Well, dude, like the Michigan jerseys from the 90s where they had the roses on the shoulder pads were so beautiful.
Awesome.
Like it's all pretty. I don't need to explain to you why it's important. But I think
get it. I just
the one thing we have to just circle back on before we go to the next game, because we're getting kind of long here, is Jaylen Milroe's discussion. And I don't know if we have the audio here, but Jaylen Milroe basically said, we do have the sound, I think. Let's play the sound of what Jaylen Milroe said.
All my life, even when I was in college, my own offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, told me I shouldn't play quarterback. So, there's a lot of things I can, have motivation on, and that is something I have motivation from.
What was your reaction to Bill O'Brien telling you that you shouldn't play quarterback? Do you remember how you felt when he said that?
How would you feel if I told you you suck?
Probably wouldn't like it.
Okay then, so that's exactly how I felt, you know what I'm saying? So biggest thing for me, be true to myself and, stay the same. Nothing changed about me. Only thing that changed me was I had the opportunity and I seized it. And so for me, the biggest thing was just stay true to myself and, I had a bigger purpose than anyone's opinion.
Is there a position he wanted you to play or said you should be this position or that position, or he just... He told me a bunch of businesses I could have switched to, but look where I'm at right now. So, you know what I'm saying? So who gets the last laugh?
I tell you what, it's one thing to say, people have doubted my ability to play quarterback,
but to attribute it to the person that is.
But to name check Bill O'Brien. I mean, I'm very interested to see. He's with the Patriots now, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
I don't know how often Patriots assistants talk, but I'm very curious to see the next time he talks, the response to that. I mean, listen, Jaylen Milroe does not have the prettiest throwing motion. He's not a pure passer, but we've seen this year that certainly he's good enough as a passer, and you can win some ball games with him. And a position move seems crazy, but
you know what the thing is, Dave, and this is the fact. in order to be a high-level player for a college football team, you do not need to be a top 5 pick at the position.
Yeah, sure.
We have, with all the draft coverage and all the success that some of the quarterbacks recently have had in the NFL, that we have conflated being an effective and dangerous college football weapon with your viability as an NFL draft prospect. Like, I don't view Jaylen Milroe as a player, and I'm not even saying this disrespectfully. I just don't think he's going to be a top 10 pick eventually.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So, but that doesn't mean he can't be a lethal player at the college level. Some of the quarterbacks I've covered in my career couldn't play quarterback, couldn't sniff quarterback in the league. I mean, Braxton Miller, in my opinion, is probably the best quarterback I've ever covered, and he would never play quarterback in the league. But if you have great ability to run, and you also can throw well enough in the college level, and maybe this has changed a little bit since Braxton was playing because offenses have become more complex and routes and checks and the RPO and all these things when it comes to, decision making have advanced where you need to be more than just an athlete. But I don't think that matters. Like, I think Jaylen Milroe is a great player, especially in college. I think he could find a spot in the NFL, and that is it. So I don't think you need to be Dan Marino back there in the college level to be lethal. And the thing that I found most interesting about that comment before we switch to the next game here, Dave, is that there seemed to be some sort of an identity crisis at Alabama to a certain extent at the beginning of the year, where it seemed like they were almost grappling with that question of, is he a quarterback or are we going to play him at quarterback? Like, the benching of him in the 4th game of the year was bizarre. And I don't know why, they were in a game where they could have lost without him and he didn't start that game. It was almost like we had to get Tyler Buckner out of our system before we could just go back to who he is. But the second that Alabama harnessed who Jaylen Milroe is and started playing offense through him while also letting him be who he is the second this team became very good. So, the name checking thing is interesting. I think that it'd be like your editor telling you that you suck at writing. Like, that's a hard thing to overcome. And he had to, have an offensive coordinator change in order to achieve that. And he's done a remarkable job. So, like, in my opinion, talk the shit, enjoy yourself. You earned it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, here's a question for you, Michigan fans, and anybody else who's listening. Who would you pick at the quarterback position in this game if you had to take one? JJ McCarthy's a top 15 pick, right? Isn't that what people think?
Well, people thinking in reality are too.
Well, I mean, he's on mock drafts in the top half of the first round all over the place. Like, it's not like one weirdo thinks that. Like, I think that he's legitimately a draft prospect that's going to be potentially.
Let me introduce you to Matt Barkley, Ari.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, if you had to take one quarterback right in this game to win the game, who are you taking? Like, quarterback matchups have been a college football playoff storyline since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Who has a better quarterback in this game?
Michigan's seeming lack of trust. I like McCarthy on paper. I think McCarthy's the guy.
Who has a better quarterback?
Well, Michigan's lack of trust in McCarthy is super alarming to me. Whereas Milroe's had to do a ton for Alabama this year. So I think McCarthy's the better overall player, but Milroe is used perhaps more effectively and I think is certainly more dangerous. But I trust McCarthy a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. My prediction, since we're doing it, is that Michigan will cover the spread 1.5 and win the game. I don't know how.
I think Bama wins outright.
My head says that, but my gut's telling me there's something bigger here that I'm missing, and I can't wait to see who's right on that.
All right, I'm gonna laugh when stars matter.
I mean, at least I'll be right if my world comes crumbling down and no Group A team wins it. But
true.
I do think that this will be a very good game. The over/under is 44.5, which means it could be a pretty closely contested football game. I don't think there's any 52-31s on there.
No.
Out there for the Michigan's defense is very good. They've done a good job of developing their players and growing within those players. The players that are on their team, though, they pale in comparison in terms of the recruiting ranking to what Alabama brings. But as we said on Stars Matter, it's kind of like, what are you taking, experience or freaks? And I think that's going to be recovering the game. My column would be experience or freaks, who you taking. Like, that's to me the whole story of it. And I'm so excited to watch the game. I
really am too. I'm hyped for both of these games. They're
in this game. Is this game before or after the one you're at?
It is before. This is the.
That's always the best.
You got to get your sunset in, Ari.
When you cover a game, a playoff game that's first, it stinks because you miss
the first half of the second.
So if you watch the first one, then you can watch the second one. It's always a nice feeling. So okay, let's go. As we said, Dave is in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. We have an interesting matchup.
Actually, Ari.
Nolans.
Mm-hmm.
I got to work on Texas accents first before I can start moving into Louisiana. Cut me some slack here. Washington, Texas, big time game, 4-point spread. Texas is laying the 4. They're favored. You're there. You've been gathering information. You're writing about it. You've been thinking about it. What's your gut check on this?
This is a really interesting. The tone in this game, Ari, is a little bit similar to Michigan TCU last year in that Washington is hearing the same things that that TCU heard a lot last year.
Who's saying this?
I think there's a perception out there. They are underdogs in the game, despite being undefeated. The idea that the Joe Moore award-winning Washington offensive line is about to get pushed around by Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. I think today, T'Vondre Sweat was asked about Washington's offensive line. He said, hey, it's just another offensive line. We'll see what happens. And Washington, I forgot as Troy. I forgot the offensive lineman's last name. You can look it up. But he basically said, I'm tired of people talking about West Coast football. It's soft. We're going to prove this. So as much as this game, the track meet narrative of this game, I kind of do think it will be decided in the trenches, because if Washington can consistently run the ball and protect Michael Penix, who's only been sacked 10 times this year, Washington's winning this game. They are, because they're going to be able to outscore Texas. If they are struggling to protect Penix and Dylan Johnson can't get any room, Texas might win this by double digits. So I think we're going to know pretty quickly how this game plays out. I think Texas wins it. I think they win it close. But we've been doubting Washington all year. I think we were both on the, Oregon lost, but Oregon's still the better team, and they're going to prove it train. And that didn't happen. And people thought that Washington was going to get pushed around by Oregon. I thought it. I think you thought it. I thought they were going to have to struggle to win that battle, and they didn't. And so as much as Washington is shaky this year, when they have had to play games where they needed to rise to the occasion, they have done it. And this game could go either way. I think both of these teams could win this game by double digits. And that is the most interesting games to me, where both of these teams are walking in here, with like some real weaponry, some real like ability to hammer the other team. And I can't wait to watch this football game.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting to me about this game. And I love that you brought the trenches. In the other game, it's kind of like experience versus freaks. In this game, it's skill versus skill and line versus line. And I think that Texas's offensive line is pretty tremendous as well. And when you say if Texas can't stop Washington or can't penetrate that offensive line or stop the run, they're going to lose by double digits. It's like, I look at that and it's like, are we even sure that Washington can stop Texas from moving the football at all? Like, the thing that I am a little bit excited about more than anything is really finding out just how good Washington is, because I, like you said, thought that Washington was going to lose to Oregon in Vegas. And then when I went to Vegas, I was like, holy crap, they are so good. Yeah. And then you peel back the curtain a little bit and you see that their offensive line is no transfer starting in their offensive line. It wins the Joe Moore Award. It's all developmental guys that have built a solid protection scheme. And you match that with Michael Penix Jr. and Jaylen Polk and the wonderful group of receivers that Washington has. And it's almost unstoppable, especially considering the fact that Dylan Johnson's a very good running back. I don't think that he's Barry Sanders.
You mentioned that. You mentioned the Texas
with
stuff,
Romo Dunze. They've got everything on offense. Like, I don't know. Like, Texas's defense has been really good all year, but I think Washington is scoring on whoever they play this year, Group A or not.
Unless it's Arizona State.
My question is whether or not Washington is equipped defensively to stop Texas from scoring every time.
Well, but why do you think that? Is it just because of the athletes that Texas has on the offensive line? Because I think Oregon is a better offense. The statistics bear that out. And Oregon struggled in Vegas to move the ball consistently, to get explosive plays.
Can I be honest? It was the USC game. I can't get it out of my head.
Okay, that's fair.
I just can't get it out of my head. And maybe the answer to that question is they were playing against the best player in college football. USC, if it can do anything, is pass really well. But like they were involved in a game this year where it seemed like whoever had the ball last was going to win. And Texas hasn't played a football game like that.
Yeah,
so
Washington's had some weird games this year. Texas has not really played like a super weird game where you're just like, you got to, maybe TCU, but I think they just fell asleep.
It would be unfair to completely ignore the fact that Texas lost to Oklahoma in a game where its defense gave up 34 points and they couldn't get a stop at the end. So you have to mention that. But
Washington's offense is much better than Oklahoma's.
I just don't know like whose skill position players you take here. Like, do you take Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and JT Sanders, or do you take Rome Odunze, Jaylen Polk, and Dylan Johnson? Like that, it is going to be a wonderful display of elite level skill position talent, and whoever wins this game is going to play a team that doesn't have that, which I think gives them a unique chance in the national championship game in Houston to maybe do something that we're not. Because I think that like there's this general assumption that whoever wins the Alabama-Texas games or Alabama-Michigan game is going to win the national title. And I think that is,
I don't buy that.
I don't know.
I
kind of feel like that. I think that like that is a really, really slippery slope to be playing. So I feel like I have doubted Washington from the beginning of the year, and I've been wrong all year. And my gut and my thought is that Texas will win this football game. But I think you have to give Washington the advantage at the quarterback position, even though I think Quinn Ewers has played some very good football in big-time, high-leverage moments. I think that the offensive lines are probably a wash. I really like the tackles on Texas's team, but one team won the best offensive line award and one didn't. So I think you have to give Washington the nod at the offensive line position. I think the skill position players are a wash, and running back I think goes to Washington because unfortunately Texas lost their best offensive weapon or one of their most consistent offensive weapons in Jonathan Brooks at the end of the year in the TCU game. So from offensive standpoint, you go to Washington as probably having a slight advantage. But then defense, like Texas's defensive line has been nasty. And I feel like if there's a difference maker or difference makers who are going to decide this football game defensively, that Texas has the clear advantage in that regard. Yeah. So to me, I think both teams could win this game by double digits, but I also think that I am leaning toward Texas, knowing full well that I have doubted and been wrong about Washington all year, and frankly left Vegas blown away by what I saw.
I think the only thing is Texas's strengths are those tackles, right? And if Washington can't run the ball in this game, I think they can still win. I think they can absolutely still win. This is a pass-first offense, and even if Texas just rushes 4, they have the talent to still put points up on the board, to still move the ball. You need to have some clean pockets. We'll see how much Texas tries to light up Penix. I think they'll be able to get some pressure on 4. But they don't, they have guys that are going to plug things up. But, I'm not sure.
And Washington has been successfully passing in the face of people expecting pass all year.
That's true.
So, I'm leaning Texas -4 here, but don't have much confidence in that at all.
I'm with you. I think we're in the same place. Yeah.
I have a ticket for Texas to win the national title at 20-1 from the beginning of the year. And if you have any advice, tweet at me or email me on like how to hedge out of this thing, because I'm a little bit nervous about that.
Washington money line is very spicy there. But
I mean, at least it's plus money to get out there. So let's do that. Okay. Do you want to take 30 seconds to discuss Miller Moss and what USC did and what that might mean for USC before we go into because that happened on Wednesday night.
Entire season, yeah.
Did he change your viewpoint on what USC has in its quarterback room and what it needs to do in the portal, or do you think that's just a bowl game?
No, I felt like USC, they may not have a special talent at quarterback, But did anybody think coming into next year that whatever happened, that USC was going to not have a quarterback that could move the ball? I think they're going to be fine, whether it's Will Howard, whether it's Miller Moss. That's not the issue. USC and however the 2024 season plays out will be defined entirely by what does DeAnton Lynn do? How quickly can you shape up? And I liked what I saw from the defense. They tackled really well in that game. And Louisville's a pretty tough football team. I loved what I saw in the open field tackling. Is that turning the page overnight? I don't know. But I liked what I saw from Miller Moss. I wasn't really surprised by any of it. I think if you
for those who didn't watch the Holiday Bowl, let me just say
6 touchdown passes.
USC beat Louisville, a team that played in the ACC championship game, 42-28. Miller Moss completed 23 of 33 throws for 372 yards and 6 touchdowns. I believe he threw 5 in the first half, and they won the game. So with Malachi Nelson transferring out, who was supposed to be the de facto replacement for Caleb Williams as a 5-star signee out of Southern California, there was a lot of questions there at USC. And Miller Moss has been a guy that, was a highly rated recruit who clearly has a lot of talent, but has seemingly been lost in the shuffle a little bit there, who's still stuck around in spite of the portal opportunities. Finally got his shot in a bowl game after Caleb Williams reasonably opted out and played his ass off and played well and produced and set a Holiday Bowl record for most touchdown passes in a game. And it kind of is interesting because it reshapes the one thing that bowl games do is it can reshape the discourse going into an offseason. And if you go into the offseason knowing he's your guy, does that change the way that you view USC's program as they attempt to fix the defense and whether or not this offense can carry that defense during a transitional period?
Well, I think there's one thing worth addressing here, which is, we kind of talked about on the last show, the idea of rooting for laundry and players linked to their university. And Lincoln Riley didn't commit to Miller Moss after the game, obviously. Shouldn't have. Nobody expected him to. But he did mention that there is value in having a guy that maybe is the face of your program, be a guy that truly loves your program. Like Missouri is dealing with some of this a little bit right now too. Brady Cook, all he ever wanted to do was be the quarterback at Missouri. Miller Moss, all he ever wanted to do was be the quarterback at USC. I think there's value in that in the portal era.
That's a nice transition to the Cotton Bowl. You good? Have you been huffing cigs down there?
No,
you're in New Orleans. You've been smoking Newports, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. No, so I messed up the time zone, so I didn't get my full show prep, which usually involves some sort of water, and also.
Oh, you have a pre-show ritual?
No, I like to get my ducks in a row. Pee first, so I don't have to get up in the middle of the show, all that stuff. And we were kind of hurrying, and then I got some kind of something. I've been coughing a little bit. Kind of coughing up stuff in the morning. I'm
been huffing schneef down there?
No, none of that.
You know what goes on? It's a pretty crazy city at night. And I know you've been partying. Dave texted me at 3:31 in the morning this morning about football.
Yeah, that's me.
Know what was going on?
I kind of feel bad. Well, we won't go there anyway. Let's move on.
No, you have to now. We're live, bud. We got to go there now.
Let's move on to the Cotton Bowl. Ari.
Okay. Mizzou, I called you yesterday, seriously, because I'm covering the Cotton Bowl. I went to the final press conference before the game, which is on Friday in AT&T Stadium, and believe I'm writing about Mizzou after the game. And I don't think I've ever covered an Ohio State football game and written about the opponent before, so I needed you to teach me what you could teach me about Mizzou, so I had an understanding of the way that the fans are viewing this game, what this means to the program build, what this means to Eli Drinkwitz. And, these two teams arrived here in very different fashion. Mizzou had a breakout season. They played Georgia very tough. They showed that they could play on the same field with everybody in the SEC. They are on the upswing of the build process, and this seems to be the payoff for the growth there. And Ohio State lost to Michigan for the 3rd straight year, and everybody in Columbus wants to light themselves on fire. And this game, though meaningless, could reveal what they're doing at quarterback too. Like, what is your viewpoint of this game? And does it feel like, Ohio State's had a lot of opt-ins. The only people who have opted out, and I don't think it's been announced yet, but I would be shocked if Marvin Harrison plays. They're
being weird about the Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, they asked Ryan Day. I was there on Thursday about it. And they're like, who's opting out, who's opting in? He's like, we're not going to answer that. And he said, these players have put in a lot of, time and effort into the program, and I don't want to be the one that announces their decisions for them or whatever.
Yeah, he's not playing.
But he's not going to play, I don't think. So, but Mizzou, the idea that Mizzou cares more is interesting because I think Ohio State fans might be checked out to some degree because of the devastation of losing that Michigan game. But on the other hand, the players on the team have opted in to try to right the ship and end the season on a high note. So I'm having a hard time gauging the give a shit meter for Ohio State. But I think that Mizzou's is probably pretty high, right?
Mizzou's extremely. I mean, I think this is a real thing in bowl season, right? And we have some pretty good examples the last couple of days. We have Rutgers playing a pseudo home game right now, beating Miami in Yankee Stadium. Earlier today, we have Boston College also playing a pseudo home game against an SMU team that, quite frankly, got shafted from getting to a New Year's Six game. And SMU did not look very good in that game. Lost as a double-digit favorite. So it's not so much who wants to be there more that you should look for. Is there a team that is not going to go through the same vigorous prep that you would for a normal game, right? And for Mizzou, they're going to want to win this game. And I don't say this to take anything away from Missouri, but I just don't see it from Ohio State. People can say all they want, but at the end of the day, are you going to watch another 90 minutes of film, or are you going to go play Xbox in the team hospitality room, for another 90 minutes? I think that's what we're talking about here. And I have a hard time buying into the idea that Ohio State and everyone on Ohio State's roster is going to prepare for this game in the same way that they would prepare for, say, Michigan game, also known as the national championship of the Big Ten. So, I think Missouri wins this game, and I think that they should be proud of that. They win as an underdog here, but, Ohio State didn't dream of finishing the season in the Cotton Bowl. If you told Missouri they're going to finish the season in the Cotton Bowl, I think they would have thrown a parade, and I think that matters.
So you think they're coming into this game feeling like this is a big-time statement program win? This can define
I think getting there is a bigger deal than, if you win it, it doesn't take away from, or if you lose it doesn't take away from anything that you do. But Ohio State, regardless of whatever the team takes the field on Saturday or whatever day this game, I don't know, my day's the week.
Friday.
Whatever team takes the field or whatever effort we see on the field, they're still wearing the Ohio State logo. They're still a team that is perennially in the playoff national championship hunt that, as I have reminded you on this show many times, Ari, was a field goal away from winning the national championship last year. So all that stuff is true. And so Missouri is going to plant their flag if they win this game. And it's a big deal. But I think Missouri is going to prepare for this game better than Ohio State is. And I think they're going to win this ball game. And they have the better quarterback.
Well, we have to talk 30 seconds about that. Ohio State's quarterback from the season, Kyle McCord, as we mentioned earlier on the show, has transferred to Syracuse and will not be playing this game. The person who was battling with him supposedly neck and neck throughout the preseason, Devin Brown, will be starting this game, and it almost feels like kind of a pseudo tryout for him as Ohio State now has gotten involved in the potential sweepstakes to get Walker Howard for next year. And whether or not he can prove that he's the guy to build around, I think is interesting. There's a lot of positive talk about Devin Brown and how he rallies the team, his personality. People seem to be excited to play with him and for him. So we never really got a chance to watch him play all that much. I think he played 80 snaps this year or something. Wasn't a ton of, a few drives here and there, a lot of which came in blowouts. And it'll be cool to see him play for 4 straight quarters and do a little bit of a roll call of what Ohio State has in its room going into the offseason and potentially into the portal season that's still going on. So that is a
Does Walker Howard have his degree, or are we going to have to play the stupid waiver game this offseason if he goes in the portal?
Will Howard. Quit calling him
you
Walker
confused
Howard.
me. I was like, I hadn't heard that one.
Did I say Walker?
You said Walker, and I was like, interesting. I hadn't heard that. I was like,
okay, because there's a recruit named Walker White that I might be getting confused with. Will Howard.
Well,
and if
Walker
I said
Howard
Walker,
is a very
I
real
apologize.
person and a very good quarterback at Ole Miss.
Maybe that's why I'm confused. Will Howard is the player that Ohio State is supposedly in the mix for, or going to try to be in the mix for. So we'll see how it goes. But the quarterback thing at Ohio State, much like it was at USC, is very interesting. And funny enough, USC people have just thought Will Howard is just going to go there, and it might turn out to be the case still. But both of these teams are trying to take, again, roll call of what they have at the quarterback position. Okay, let's go to the Peach Bowl briefly. Apparently, that's all you can eat Chick-fil-A for the media there. Audrey Snyder, our Penn State beat
usually
writer,
goes.
sending us a bunch of pictures of grab-and-go Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Penn State, 10-2, is laying 4.5 points against Ole Miss. And both Andy Kotelnicki and Tom Allen have been involved in bowl prep for Penn State before going out and helping. So you already have your mind made up because you're obsessed with that hire. And we will see.
No, it's just like I mean, I
he drew up the whole offense. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Listen, this is going to be a good litmus test for like not just my sort of take of wondering about how good these Big Ten defenses really are. Ole Miss got some athletes. Jackson Dart, he's not a world beater, but he's a really good quarterback. And then Quinshon Judkins. There's not a better back than him in the Big Ten. I feel certain about that. I'm thinking about it. Maybe Blake Corum, but like he doesn't really got the touches this year. And Blake Corum is not nearly as explosive as Judkins is. And Judkins' balance is really good. I like Ole Miss in this ball game. I'm just not a huge believer in Penn State's ability to beat big-time teams. Ole Miss, if Ole Miss played Ohio State, I mean, that's a toss-up, isn't it?
I mean, I would guess so, yeah.
Okay. Well, Penn State was not competitive, particularly with Ohio State. And Ole Miss certainly doesn't have the same defense. But
that's the thing. That's the whole thing, though.
Well, but I'm not sure
Penn State has actually had very good offensive production in games against teams with leaky defenses.
Okay. But I don't know that Ole Miss has like a terrible defense. I think they have a okay defense. Now, I think in general, the vibes out of Oxford the last month have been pretty spicy, and I do think that can show up in a bowl game where like there's so much excitement around them, and trying to use this as a springboard and get some excitement in the offseason that you've already established yourselves as sort of the portal kings, and you can get a win here. I like Ole Miss outright in this ball game.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss has definitely won the vibe check, right? Like, I mean, they got Walter Nolan to commit yesterday, who was one of the best defensive linemen in the entire transfer portal. They got.
I love the coordinator hires for the record.
Yeah, the coordinator. I mean, they seem like they're like we've talked about this on the last show. They're going all in. I don't know how much I think that means for the game. And Penn State, had some pretty good offensive outputs. I know, say what you want about Michigan State. They scored 42 points. They scored 27 against Rutgers, 51 against Maryland, 33 against Indiana, 41 against Northwestern. They beat Iowa and scored 31 points, 31-0. Like, they have scored in games. So I think that their offense has been fractured, and they only scored 27 total points against Ohio State and Michigan, but it doesn't mean that they're completely and utterly incompetent as an Iowa outfit would be. So,
they're not that level. But
I don't know that I love laying 4.5 here, and I think I'm with you, but I don't like the notion that like you are, not you, just anybody listening, like is a sucker for thinking that Penn State's offense is only capable of doing what it did against Ohio State and Michigan, which I think are two of the best defenses in college football this year.
The best case for Penn State, Ari, and I don't know what to make of it, but they soundly beat West Virginia, and it seemed at the time kind of underwhelming because I thought they were going to win that game by like 100. And West Virginia, I don't know if you recall, won 9 games. Like, West Virginia is a good team. Now, maybe those teams look a lot different in December January than they did in September. But, like, you look back at what Penn State has done this season, like, that's a much more impressive win than we thought at the time. So, if Penn State wins, I think, maybe that says a little bit about Ohio State, and it says that Penn State, we may have been sleeping on them this year, but I still like Ole Miss here.
Okay, let's get to a few other games here because we're running low on time. The Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, number 2 Clemson, 8-4, laying 4.5 points against Kentucky. The over-under is 44.5. Clemson is coming into the game with their fewest number of total regular season wins since 2010. And again, I don't think that they made any portal moves, or not any that I can remember or are consistent with what you would expect a team needing to do. Where's your take on Clemson right now heading into the offseason, and what do you think of the game?
This is kind of the underwhelming OC Bowl, right? Kentucky brings in Liam Cohen. They bring in Devin Leary. Didn't go great this year. I thought Kentucky could flirt with 10 wins. They didn't have an awful season, but they were not as dangerous as it seemed like they could be. Clemson, not to sound like Tyler from Spartanburg, but this is not what they needed to be this year. The marriage between Garrett Riley and
both teams have had really underwhelming seasons.
Very much so. And I don't think Liam Cohen was limited in any way. I have a lot of questions about what Garrett Riley was allowed or not allowed to do this year. But ultimately, Clemson, at the end of the day, Ari, not to sound like Ari Wasserman here, we're talking about the nation's 5th best team in talent versus the nation's number 31 team. And Kentucky, they've won 2 games in the last 7. They beat a bad Mississippi State team and then sort of inexplicably beat up on Louisville. Give me Clemson here.
I'm fading Clemson in every regard right now.
Why?
I am disgusted by their seemingly lack of activity in the portal.
Okay. That's probably not going to be that big of an issue in this game, I got to tell you.
No, I'm just saying like the morale and everything about like fixing it. It's just like it's just off.
Yeah, if you're trying to look for reasons why Clemson's going to snap back into national title contender mode for next year,
you can't find any right now.
You're going to be looking a while. I personally think that there might be some invisible handcuffs on our buddy Garrett Riley, and I'd like to see those removed, but maybe I'm wrong. But I know that offense did not look like what we saw at TCU last year. So
the next game I wanted to get to, and I don't know if we'll get to all of them because we're running out of time.
We can do a speed round if we need it.
Yeah, okay. The Orange Bowl.
Yep.
Number 5, Florida State. Number 5, Florida State. 13-0. They are getting 19.5 points against Georgia, who is 12-1. Lost the SEC game. Florida State is the first undefeated team since the 1997 to not be in a BCS national championship or college football semifinal. And I think unbeaten P5 team. I don't know if I said that, but I don't want you to go on a Boise rant. We can't handle that right now. Nobody on Florida State's playing. Everybody opted out, and I don't blame them. There's plus.
I don't either. I'm disappointed, but I don't blame them. I really am disappointed as somebody who wanted to see them stick to the committee, go for the split national championship. I would have liked to have seen that. But that is not what's
what
happening.
Kind of person would you be?
What do you mean?
If you were on Florida State's roster, if it were you and somebody took something that you earned from you, how would you react to it?
I think you got here's what I think if it's me. I want to do a players only meeting. Not all the guys, but like your 10 core guys. And I want to hash it out. Guys, are we in or are we out? I don't want to do the half measure. Are we going for this or are we not going for this? Are we going to protect ourselves, protect our future, or are we going to try to seal our legacy here? And I don't know that that's what happened at Florida State. I'm sure there's some influence in some of their decisions, but I don't know. That's the route that I would kind of go. Is like, we got to decide, are we in or are we out? And it seems like they're out.
I'll tell you what I would do if I were Keon Coleman or somebody else who's going to be taken in the draft. I would protect myself. If a system told me that the games I played didn't matter, then I wouldn't want to play another one. And maybe that's just like me being stubborn, but I 100% understand and like, listen to, there's going to be no co-national champion. That shit's over with. It's not. Yeah, but
happen. you can lock in your legacy at the university. They're going to put up a banner if they win this game. That does matter, even if it's not real. That does matter.
I mean, I guess I don't know. What already happened, and I don't think beating Georgia in a game that is not as an exhibition really proves much, especially considering the fact that everybody's be like, well, Georgia didn't care because they didn't make it to the playoff, whatever. But like AJ Duffy's out. Yeah. Tate Rodemaker's out. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, Jared Verse. Those are their 5 best players. They're down to their 3rd string quarterback again that couldn't move the football. Maybe with a month to prepare, Brock Glenn will be a little bit more prepared in order to take that down. But I just wanted to say that I don't blame Florida State for protecting themselves and worrying about their
how
future.
many more examples do you need to see? Jake Butt, Jaylen Smith. I'm forgetting a couple. It happens. It's not a
and
fake
we're
thing.
not talking about dudes that are. I mean, we're talking like first round grade guys here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I feel bad for Florida State. It's a shame that it had to come to this, but the Georgia line has moved from like 13.5 to 19.5. Nobody on Florida State's team is playing. And I don't know how much the people who are playing are even caring at this point. So it's unfortunate. And you hate to see a team that really did everything it could on the field in order to accomplish something be left out. But like you said earlier in the show, as much as we both agree that Florida State got screwed, I also think that the result of it is better games on January 1 when the playoffs happen. And I think both things can be true at the same time. So, okay, let's go to the Fiesta Bowl. Oregon 10-2 playing Liberty 13-0. If Liberty can cover, how big of a deal would this be heading into the 12-team playoff?
Listen, in these games, the G5 has largely acquitted themselves very well. They've won a bunch of these games. I don't have the record offhand. It's been a bit of a busy week. But they've won a bunch of these games. They have rarely, if ever, gotten embarrassed. That's not something that's really happened a ton in these games.
Because I do think the care meter really matters in these games.
Yes, I think that's true. On the flip side, this Liberty team is probably one of the weakest G5 teams that we have seen in the New Year's Six. They're, they don't have a ton of athletes. Caden Salters had a really great year. They've been really fun to watch. I think the over is a very interesting play here. Oregon's defense concerns me. Liberty, not great at stopping people. But I think they can cover here. I would probably take them to cover. Oregon's defense would scare me. But Liberty is not, the legitimacy of the G5 playoff bid. That's silliness to me. Like, how much more do we need to see over, since the BCS era started? 1998. We have 25 years of data of teams showing up in major bowl situations and winning a bunch of games, competing in a bunch of games. And the only times, look, what are the times that they've gotten embarrassed? I guess, everybody points to that Georgia-Hawaii game. That's the outlier. That's not the rule. And Memphis Penn State
17 points
very
does
well.
seem like a lot.
It is a lot. So Memphis, Penn State didn't look great in that game, but there have not been a lot of just like walkovers, and people think it's going to happen every time, and then it doesn't happen. And people are like, "Oh wow!" Every year, it's like, yeah, the good G5 teams are really good. Like, shocker. It's hard to go 14-0 in any league. It's not like, listen, Liberty has a bunch of advantages in their league that help them, and they didn't play a premier non-con game, but like, it's still hard to go 14-0. There's a reason why there's not.
And they'll be able to score, I think.
Every year. Yeah, I think so. Maybe not a ton, but, what's it going to take to cover? 20 points? I think I can get that.
Okay, this is the last one we're going to do, and then we'll get out of here.
We got to do speed round. We'll do a quick speed round.
I don't even know what else I'm missing here.
So we got to talk. We can talk Citrus Bowl.
Okay, go ahead. That's the last one I wanted to do. That's
okay. Well, there you go.
This is a big deal. This is
it is a big deal.
Waiting for this. The Citrus Bowl is on Monday. Number 21 Tennessee, 8-4, laying 6.5, playing the impenetrable Iowa defense, 10-3. And this is important because of the quarterback scenario for Tennessee. It is Nico Iamaleava. Nico Iamaleava.
There you go.
Nico Iamaleava.
I think that was right. Yes. We'll get there.
Gave me the phonetic spelling of it on Stars Matter.
Yes.
And I still can't get it. Nico is starting, 5-star quarterback, professional bag getter. Incredible arm talent. This is much watched television as long as it's not happening during a playoff game. And I think that
it's before, if I recall.
Okay, hopefully it is.
There's like 3 games at that noon slot on New Year's Day. I think they're in one of them.
This went from like a snoozer. Iamaleava has a Iowa game. I just read it phonetically from Andrew Cooper.
Yeah, but
Iamaleava.
Okay. points. All right. We'll give
Iowa game has an over-under of 35.5 with this.
This
kid.
was a game like Tennessee. God love them. They've been really boring all year. Like they haven't really had any. They haven't had a ton of big wins. Well, haven't had any big wins. They got beat lopsidedly in some games that they probably shouldn't have, but they didn't really lose any ugly games. Like you can point to Florida, but they never play Florida well. Tennessee just had a really uninteresting season, and this is like the most interesting game that they've played because he might be the next big star in the sport. And if that's the case, we're going to see Tennessee knocking on the door of the playoff in the next couple of years. I'm really intrigued. I think it's tough because you have obviously an Iowa defense that is the nation's best statistically. It's not going to take a ton of points to score in this game, but if you recall, now listen, he's a lot better than Destin Wade. So I'm not saying that from what we saw from Kentucky in the Music City Bowl last year, something like that. So I'm not saying that, but this is a tough assignment for the first start for a guy that hadn't played really a lot of meaningful snaps, but I'm really interested to see how this goes. And I think Joe Milton's a very intriguing guy. If it's addition by subtraction, I'm not going to be floored. A lot of people around Tennessee have been knocking on the door that, hey, Joe is just not that dude. He's not made the leap that you wanted him, the leap you've wanted him to make. He has not improved a ton throughout his career. And there is some opportunity to see what you got in Nico. But this is a very loyal staff. And they weren't going to do that. And now with Joe opting out, you have an opportunity to kind of see what you got here.
Well, what are realistic expectations for you on how he plays? Like, do you think it's possible that it'll become apparent that he's a star in the making? Like, we knew the second that Caleb Williams came onto the field, and maybe that's not a fair comparison, but like I am of the mind that you don't need 6 months of film to see it in a guy. You'll see it very quickly if they are that dude.
Yes.
And I wonder if we're going to get a glimpse of that.
I don't know. Like, this goes back to what we've been talking about all season long with these Big Ten defenses. Like, how much of it is the Big Ten West just being absolute garbage offensively?
I think it's somewhere in the middle, like everything in life.
Somewhat. And I think we'll know, like, there's nobody running this kind of offense. And Tennessee's had a
But have you been hearing, is he
weapons.
a star? Like, have you been hearing in Knoxville that people are like...
You hear mixed things.
Okay.
You know, it's not like universal, like, oh my gosh, but it's not like, we got some concerns about this guy. Like, you know, you hear mixed things. He's still really young. And I just schematically, I'm very intrigued to see how they match up with Iowa. I think they're going to stretch the field some more. I think he's going to hit some balls that like really sort of raise some eyebrows. He might make some mistakes. But I think the one thing that you like when you hear about Nico is he's got a good head on his shoulders. Like, he's going to do the work. He was a really big name coming into Tennessee, and he has shut up. He's kept his head down. He's worked. And you hear a lot of good things about him off the field this season, and he needed to kind of stay out of the just learn, spend your first year on campus, and now you're going to kind of see the fruits of those labor. So it went from being a game that I did not particularly want to engage in because Iowa was involved and Tennessee's been really uninteresting to now it's halfway must-see TV. I'm very intrigued. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, well, one last thing before we get out of here. I don't know if our producer, Cam Aluna, can do this for us, but Cam, I sent you 2 different pictures of the toaster oven.
I've seen them.
Or the toaster
I'm
at
so
the
excited.
Bowl.
Look at that.
So I don't know. So the edible Pop-Tart, I think, pops up out of this at the end of the game. I think.
Nobody told me that was going to be a big toaster. Listen, I love this so much. More bowls, more bowl games. I love this giant toaster. If you told me it, I was already hyped for the giant Pop-Tart. If you told me it was going to be jumping out of a giant toaster, I might be there right now.
Is this a fire hazard? I don't even know.
I think we'll find out.
We'll find out. Okay. Well, you guys go watch the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Can we do a speed round, Ari? Let's go through these.
Who am I forgetting, Dave? I don't even know who I'm forgetting.
The LSU Wisconsin. Which bowl game?
Okay.
Was that? The
ReliaQuest Bowl.
ReliaQuest. Sure, why not? Give me LSU there in the points. Or laying the points. Athletes, baby, athletes, and Wisconsin's kind of a mess. What do you like there?
Braylon Edwards and Badgers starting center.
Braylon Allen.
Tanner
Braylon
did I
Edwards
say?
is Braylon. You said Braylon Edwards, who is
I'm having a
a
rough day,
long
guys.
retired receiver. Yes,
Very good one. Also, top
Very
5
good.
pick. Braylon Allen and Badger starting center Tanner Bortoloni are not playing. I know that you have to go out with a bang with LSU covering the spread of the ReliaQuest Bowl just to save some face. After I mean, the ReliaQuest Bowl is how far away from the playoff
I have
areas
no idea
geographically? I don't know what
Bowl
city
is
it's in.
technically. I don't know, but listen, this is a pro Garrett Nussmeier podcast coming out party.
Yeah,
for him.
yeah. I've heard really good things about him. And let's go to the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Oregon State plus 6.5 against Notre Dame. Sam Hartman is opted out, and DJU
and
is
Aiden
in the
Childs,
portal.
He's out.
Yeah,
going to Michigan State.
So
I'll watch this game out of principle. That's probably about it. Low scoring. I like the under here. I guess I'll take Notre Dame in the points. It feels like Oregon State. I don't like the vibes coming out of there.
There could be like give up vibes here when you lose your coach, and yeah.
And you're sort of looking in the future, and it's like, well, next year's going to kind of suck because all the teams we like playing, we're going to go play a Mountain West schedule. I don't love it. I'm sorry, Oregon State. It's not going to be bad. So the ReliaQuest Bowl is the Zombie Outback Bowl. Is that where we're at?
I think that's what that is. Yes.
Sure. Okay.
Wait, no, wasn't the Pop-Tart Bowl the Zombie Outback Bowl?
All the moving, like Buffalo Wild Wings was like one bowl, and it switched bowls.
Outback was Orlando, and Pop-Tart is in Orlando. So, and honestly, the Blooming Onion is the best mascot of all time, right?
It's a great mascot. I mean, if we can get, that's probably the best bowl mascot, honestly. Although the orange is probably more iconic.
Yeah,
the giant orange, but and it's had some unbelievable moments with the West Virginia game, the Mark Mangino photo. I love the Orange Bowl mascot, but I think in general the Bloomin' Onion is better as a novelty. So,
all right, guys. Well, why don't you go watch the big Pop-Tart Bowl? Thank you so much for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday. Be sure you're subscribed to the Until Saturday podcast feed so that you're notified when we put out new episodes. We will be back on Sunday for a special Last Thoughts edition of the Until Saturday feed, where Dave, me, Max, and Sam will join the podcast, and all three of those guys will be in Louisiana. I'll be in my living room, and
possibly from my hotel room.
We will impart some final thoughts and share some last-minute nuggets ahead of Monday night's semifinal games. Be sure to call the Until Saturday tip line to get your voicemail played if we said something in the preview show today that enraged you. I'd love to hear about it. The phone number is 316-462-9852. Again, that is 316-462-9852. Thank you guys so much. Be sure to subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast stream. Subscribe to the Until Saturday newsletter. The links for all those things can be found in your show's description. For me, David Ubben, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you on Sunday.
Bring back the turnover chain. I got